My name is Margaret Lewis. I am 78 years old, a retired schoolteacher who once spent her days in a classroom full of children's laughter and the sweet smell of chalk dust. I have lived most of my life in the quiet suburbs of Illinois, in a modest but warm home my late husband and I built together. That house was meant to be a haven for generations, but little did I know, it would also become the place where I almost lost my last breath. The night it happened, the air was heavy. My body had grown frail over the years, but my mind was sharp. I was lying in my bed, the moonlight slanting through the curtains, when I felt a shadow hover above me. First I thought it was a dream. But then, something pressed hard against my nose and mouth. My lungs screamed. My hands clawed. My chest burned. I opened my eyes, and there she was. My daughter-in-law Jessica. Her face was twisted, her weight bearing down on me as she pressed a pillow into my face. I tried to scream, but the sound died in my throat. My arms flailed weakly, hitting her sides, but she didn't budge. The only sound was the muffled rasp of my breath. For a terrifying moment, I thought that was it. My story, my life, all the sacrifices I had made, ending at the hands of the very woman who had married into my family. But there was something Jessica didn't know. A tiny red light blinked silently in the corner of my bedroom, watching everything, recording every single movement, every desperate gasp, every hateful glare on her face. And that little camera, my secret, would change everything. But I didn't know if I would survive long enough for it to matter. Because as my vision blurred and darkness crowded in, she leaned down and hissed in my ear. "No one will believe you." And just as my body went limp, the sound of a door creaked somewhere in the house. Someone was coming. Who was it? And would they save me, or finish what Jessica started? I wasn't always this weak. My story began years before that night, when my son Michael brought Jessica into our lives. Back then, I still believed family was everything. I believed loyalty was a promise no one would dare to break. Michael was my only son, my pride and joy. After his father died of a heart attack, I poured all my love, energy, and savings into raising him. I taught him values, I showed him what sacrifice meant, and I believed with all my heart that he would protect me when I grew old. But I should have known that love can blind us. Because Jessica wasn't the woman I thought she was. At first, she played the perfect daughter-in-law. Smiles, politeness, helping hands in the kitchen. But small things started to shift. She would roll her eyes when Michael wasn't looking. She would sigh dramatically when I asked for help reaching the higher cupboard. She began to act as though my very presence in the house was an inconvenience. I brushed it off, because what else can a mother do when her son is happy? But in hindsight, every sigh, every sharp glance, every cold laugh, it was a warning. And as the years passed, those warnings grew darker. But why would she want me gone? Why would my own son's wife try to suffocate me in the dead of night? The answer lies in what happened just months before that night. The night that camera captured everything. Started with my will. Michael had asked me one evening at dinner, "Mom, do you still have that old deed to the house?" Smiled proud. "Of course I do. Your father and I worked our whole lives for this place. It's fully paid, and one day it'll be yours." Jessica's eyes flashed. I caught it, just for a second, the sharp gleam of greed. She leaned in. "And what about the savings account? The one you mentioned last Christmas?" Something in her tone made me pause. But I answered honestly. "That account is for emergencies. I don't touch it." Her lips curled into a tight smile, but I didn't know then that she was already plotting. And that was only the beginning. From that day, life in the house grew tense. Things of mine went missing. My jewelry, heirlooms, even my medications. I began to feel dizzy, weak, confused. First, I thought it was age catching up with me. But later, I would discover something far more sinister. The nights grew heavier. Whispers floated through the halls. Arguments between Michael and Jessica that stopped the moment I entered the room. My son would reassure me. "Don't worry, Mom. Everything's fine." But the way he avoided my eyes told me otherwise. And then one evening, I overheard something that froze my blood. Jessica's voice, sharp as a knife, slicing through the quiet. She's lived long enough. Once she's gone, this house is ours. My knees went weak. I had to grip the wall to steady myself. My son's voice followed, low, conflicted. Jessica, please. Don't say things like that. But she did say it. And she meant it. That night I couldn't sleep. My heart raced. My mind spun. I had trusted these walls, trusted my family, trusted the people under my roof. And now, I wasn't sure if I was safe in my own bed. So I did something I had never thought I would do at my age. I bought a hidden camera. A small, discreet thing that tucked neatly into the corner of my room. I told myself it was just for peace of mind. Just in case. Little did I know, that small device would become the only witness to the night my daughter-in-law tried to take my life. When Jessica crept into my room with that pillow, when she pressed it over my face, when my body thrashed in the dark, it was all captured. Every breath I fought for, every desperate struggle. But in that moment, I didn't know if I would live long enough for the truth to come out. Because as the door creaked and footsteps entered the hallway, I realized something terrifying. If it was Michael, would he stop her? Or had he already chosen her side? Backhand index pointing right. If this story pulled you in, don't miss what happens next. Do you think Michael walked in to save his mother? Or to protect his wife? Stay tuned, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see justice unfold in the next chapter. The sound of footsteps in the hallway grew louder, each creak of the wooden floor echoing like a drum inside my chest. My vision blurred from lack of air, my arms weak from struggling beneath the weight of Jessica's fury. I couldn't tell if I was seconds away from death, or rescue. The pillow pressed harder. My heart thrashed. My chest convulsed as I tried to suck in air. Then suddenly the pressure lifted. I gasped, coughing violently, every breath burning my throat like fire. Jessica sprang back, her face pale, eyes darting toward the door. The door slowly pushed open. "Mom!" Michael's voice. Jessica was standing there, breathing fast, hands clenched at her sides. For a moment no words came out. My eyes watered as I tried to steady myself, the weight of the moment pressing down heavier than the pillow ever could. Michael stepped into the room. His face caught between confusion and irritation. He glanced at me, then at Jessica. "What's going on?" Jessica spoke first. Too quickly. Too smoothly. She had another episode. I came in to check on her. She was thrashing in her sleep. Her voice was calm, practiced, deceptively sweet. I wanted to shout the truth, to tell my son what had just happened, but my lungs were still gasping, my voice weak. Only a hoarse whisper came out. "She tried." Jessica cut me off. "She's delirious. Michael, you know how she gets when she forgets to take her medication." Michael's jaw tightened. He turned to me. His eyes filled with something I couldn't read. Was it doubt? Was it pity? Or was it something worse, belief in her lies? That moment, lying there, fighting for words, realizing that even my son might not believe me, that was the night I understood the depth of my mistake. But before we get to the choice Michael made that night, let me take you back. Let me tell you how I got here. Because betrayal doesn't happen in an instant. It builds, slowly, like rot beneath a floorboard. And by the time you notice it, the foundation of your life is already crumbling. I wasn't always a frail old woman fighting for breath under her own roof. Once, I was Margaret Lewis, strong and sure, the kind of woman who gave more than she ever took. I married young, 22. My husband, Richard, was a steelworker, broad-shouldered and kind-hearted. Life wasn't easy. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and we had our dreams. Together, we saved every dime until we could afford the little house I still live in today. When Michael was born, that house became our sanctuary. I poured my soul into raising him, into making sure he had everything I never had. I worked 2 jobs when Richard's hours were cut. I cooked, cleaned, and still found time to tutor neighborhood kids just to bring in a little extra cash. I sacrificed sleep, comfort, and sometimes even meals, just so my son could go to school with new shoes and a packed lunch. I told myself, one day he'll understand. One day he'll look back and know what I gave for him. But maybe I gave too much. Maybe in teaching him that I'd always be there, I taught him to take me for granted. Jessica came into Michael's life years later, when he was in his 30s. She was striking, the kind of woman who turned heads when she walked into a room. She had a smile that could melt anyone, except me. From the very beginning I felt something off about her. Not because she wasn't kind at first. Oh, she was. She showered me with gifts, helped in the kitchen, called me Mom in that syrupy voice. But it was too much, too rehearsed. And behind that smile, I saw her eyes calculating. Always calculating. Still I pushed my doubts aside. Michael was happy and that was all I wanted. I welcomed her. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I even let her move into the house when times got tough for them financially. That was the beginning of my undoing. Because once Jessica stepped foot into my home, it stopped being my sanctuary. It became a battlefield. First, the changes were subtle. A vase moved here, a picture taken down there. My favorite armchair, suddenly too old and taking up space. She redecorated without asking. My living room began to feel like hers. Then came the whispers. The times she'd forget to call me for dinner. The moments she'd mock my old-fashioned ways under her breath. The groceries I bought disappearing from the pantry. When I confronted her, she'd smile and say, "Oh, Margaret, you must be forgetting again. Don't worry, it happens at your age." It cut me deeper than any knife could. But Michael, my son, my only child, he brushed it off. "Mom, Jessica's just trying to help. Don't take it the wrong way." I swallowed my pride. Again, and again. But the disrespect grew bolder. Jessica began to speak to me like a burden, not a mother-in-law. When I asked her to slow down while driving me to church, she snapped. "Maybe if you can't handle speed, you should stop leaving the house altogether." When I forgot where I placed my glasses, she muttered under her breath, "Maybe we should start looking into homes for you." And worst of all, she said these things in front of Michael. He never defended me. Sometimes he looked away. Sometimes he laughed nervously. Sometimes, he just kept eating as though I hadn't been humiliated at his table. Do you know what it feels like to be invisible in your own family? To watch your son, the boy you raised with every ounce of love in your heart, let a stranger erase you piece by piece. Feels like dying slowly. But the breaking point came one evening when I overheard them in the kitchen. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but their voices carried through the walls. Jessica's voice was sharp. "She's not going to last forever, Michael. And when she's gone, we'll have everything. The house, the savings, all of it." Michael's voice was low. "Jessica, stop. That's my mother." Her reply. Chilling laugh. "And what has she given you lately?" "Nothing. She's just sitting there waiting to die. Think about our future. Think about the kids we could have. Do you want them growing up in a cramped space, barely making ends meet, because your mother clings to everything?" The silence that followed broke me more than her words. Because silence meant he was considering it. That was the night I realized I was not safe. And that was the night I made the choice that saved my life. I went online, trembling hands typing into the search bar. Hidden cameras for home safety. I ordered one small enough to go unnoticed, one I could place in my room without suspicion. I told myself it was paranoia. I told myself I would never need it. But when Jessica pressed that pillow over my face weeks later, when my lungs screamed for air and my son stood in the doorway staring at me with conflicted eyes, that camera became my lifeline. Michael looked from Jessica to me. His eyes unreadable. "Michael!" I croaked, my throat raw, my hands shaking as I pointed at her. She tried. Jessica stepped closer to him, tears welling in her eyes, her voice quivering with false innocence. "She's confused, Michael. You know she's been struggling. You've seen it yourself." I was helping her. His jaw clenched. His silence filled the room like poison. In that moment, I wasn't sure what terrified me more. The thought that my son wouldn't believe me, or the thought that he already didn't. What would you do if your own child stood in silence while someone tried to erase you? Do you think Michael will defend his mother, or will he turn a blind eye? Stay tuned for the next chapter, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next twist. Michael's silence was a dagger twisting inside me. He stood there, his eyes shifting between me, his frail mother gasping for breath, and Jessica, who was clutching her chest like she'd just been wrongly accused. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him and remind him of every scraped knee I had bandaged, every sleepless night I spent working double shifts so he could eat, every prayer I whispered over his bed while he slept. But all I could do was croak out one word. Please. Jessica seized the moment. She stepped into the circle of his hesitation, laying her hand on his arm. Her voice dripped with honey. She's confused, Michael. She hasn't been herself. She needs rest, not accusations. You know I'd never hurt her. Michael's jaw worked as though he wanted to speak but couldn't. Finally, he sighed and said the words that shattered me. Jessica, why don't you go back to bed? I'll stay with Mom for a bit. It was the safest answer. Neutral. Non-committal. But to me, it meant only one thing. He didn't believe me. Not fully. Not enough. Jessica kissed his cheek, casting me one last glance, cold, victorious, before leaving the room. Michael sat on the edge of my bed. Mom, he said softly, you need to stop working yourself up. Stress isn't good for you. I think maybe you dreamed what happened. Dreamed. My chest still burned, my throat raw, my lungs aching for air. I grabbed his wrist, my frail hand trembling. Michael, she tried to kill me. He didn't look me in the eyes. He just patted my hand like I was a child frightened of the dark. We'll talk in the morning. But the truth was, we never did. The next few days were a blur of silence and unease. Jessica avoided me, but when our paths crossed in the kitchen or hallway, her eyes said everything. Try to tell him again. See what happens. Michael, on the other hand, buried himself in work. He left early, came home late, and when he was home, he barely spoke to me at all. The wedge between us grew sharper, colder. I replayed that night in my mind again and again. The way she pressed the pillow. The way she whispered in my ear. No one will believe you. And the worst part. She was right. But while they thought I was powerless, I had one thing they didn't know about. That little camera blinking silently in the corner of my room. When I finally gathered the courage, I retrieved the footage. My hands shook as I plugged it into the old laptop I kept in my dresser drawer. And there it was, clear as day. Jessica creeping into my room. Jessica pressing the pillow over my face. Jessica's twisted expression as I struggled for breath. Not just because of the terror I had lived through, but because I knew now, without doubt, that I wasn't crazy. The camera had recorded every breath she tried to steal. But the question was, what could I do with it? My first instinct was to go to Michael. To show him, to make him see the truth. But then fear crept in. What if he refused to watch? What if Jessica spun it into another story? What if he chose her over me again? The thought of losing him completely was almost worse than what Jessica had done. So I hesitated. Waited. I told myself I needed the right moment. But in that hesitation, Jessica grew bolder. She began to leave me cold meals on the counter instead of inviting me to the table. When I coughed too hard one night, she banged on my door and hissed, "Do you mind? Some of us are trying to sleep." Once, she accidentally locked me out in the cold while I was sweeping the porch. I stood there for nearly an hour shivering, until Michael came home and let me in. Jessica acted surprised. "Oh, did I do that? Silly me." Her cruelty was a steady drip, like water eroding stone. Each day, a little piece of me wore away. And Michael, he looked at me with pity now. As though I were a burden. As though I were weak. I thought I had reached my breaking point. But then came the night that sealed my resolve. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when I heard them in the living room. Their voices were low, but the walls carried every word. "Jessica. It's just a matter of time. Once she's gone, we can sell the place and move somewhere better. Michael, don't talk like that. Jessica. Oh, come on, Michael. She's clinging on by a thread. Do you want to spend the rest of your life babysitting? I clutched my blanket, tears sliding down my face. Babysitting. That's what she called caring for me. And my son didn't deny it. He didn't defend me. He just let the words hang there in the air. That was the moment I knew. If I wanted to survive, I couldn't wait for Michael to choose me. I had to choose myself. The very next morning I made an appointment. Not with a doctor. Not with a therapist. With a lawyer. I told him everything. I brought the footage. I explained my fears. And for the first time in months, I felt like someone actually believed me. He leaned back in his chair, watching the video with a grim expression. Mrs. Lewis, he said finally, you've got more than enough here. This isn't just abuse. This is attempted murder. My heart pounded. Attempted murder. The words were terrifying but also validating. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. But he wasn't finished. The question is, are you ready for what happens if we move forward? This could destroy your son's marriage. It could turn him against you permanently. I looked down at my trembling hands. The hands that had once held Michael when he was a baby. The hands that had cooked his meals, folded his laundry, wiped away his tears. And I asked myself, was protecting him worth my life? That night, I returned home with the weight of the world pressing on me. I hadn't made a decision yet. My heart warred with my head. Jessica greeted me with her usual cold smile. Have a good day, Margaret. I didn't answer. I went straight to my room, clutching the evidence that could save me, or destroy everything I loved. I sat there for hours, staring at the screen, the footage replaying over and over. And then, just as midnight struck, I heard a knock on my door. It wasn't Jessica's sharp rap. It was Michael. Hesitant. Mom, he whispered. Can I come in? Backhand index pointing right. If you were Margaret, would you show Michael the footage right then? Or would you hold it back, afraid of losing him forever? Stay tuned for the next chapter. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chilling turn. The knock on my bedroom door echoed softly in the silence of the night. My heart pounded in my chest as I sat frozen on the edge of my bed. The laptop still open on my nightstand. The damning footage paused on the screen. Mom, Michael whispered again. His voice uncertain, almost childlike. Can I come in? For a moment I didn't answer. 1,000 thoughts collided inside me. What if he was here to finally listen? What if this was my chance to show him the truth? But what if he wasn't ready? What if Jessica had already poisoned him against me? I swallowed the lump in my throat. Come in. The door creaked open. Michael stepped inside. His tall frame casting a long shadow across the floor. He closed the door quietly, as though he didn't want Jessica to know he was there. His face was tired, eyes rimmed red, as if he hadn't been sleeping either. He sat down beside me on the bed. For a moment neither of us spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the old clock on my dresser. Finally he sighed. Mom, Jessica says you've been accusing her of awful things. He rubbed his forehead. I just need to know why. Why would you say that? My lips trembled. Because it's the truth, Michael. She tried to suffocate me. He flinched, his jaw tightening. Do you hear how that sounds? You're asking me to believe that my wife, would try to kill you. I turned my face to him, tears brimming in my eyes. I'm not asking you to believe me blindly. I have proof. His head snapped toward me, startled. Proof. I reached for the laptop, my fingers hovering over the play button. This was it. This was the moment. One click and everything would change. But then doubt gripped me. What if he refused to watch? What if he slammed the laptop shut and stormed out? What if Jessica twisted this into another lie, and I lost him forever? My hand shook over the touchpad. My chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. Michael frowned. What proof, Mom? What are you talking about? I opened my mouth to answer, but before I could, the sound of footsteps creaked outside the door. Jessica's voice, low and sweet. "Michael? Are you still awake?" My son tensed. His eyes darted toward the door, then back to me. He looked torn in two, like a rope pulled from both ends. I whispered urgently, "Don't tell her. Please. Don't tell her you're here." But the doorknob rattled. "Michael!" Jessica called again. Michael stood abruptly, his shoulders stiff. "I'll handle it," he muttered. He opened the door and stepped out, leaving me trembling in the dark. I pressed my ear to the wall, straining to hear. Their voices were muffled, but the tension was clear. "Jessica, what are you doing in there?" "Michael, I was just talking to her." "Jessica, about what?" "Michael, Jessica, not now." Her tone sharpened. "She's trying to turn you against me, isn't she? Don't let her do this, Michael. He's not well. She's confused." There was a pause. Then Michael's voice, heavy and weary. "Just go to bed." Their footsteps retreated down the hall. I sank back onto my bed, my whole body trembling. The chance had slipped away. I hadn't shown him the footage. I hadn't spoken the words that could save me. And deep down, I feared I had just made the worst mistake of my life. The following days became unbearable. Jessica grew bolder, more possessive. She hovered around Michael constantly, whispering to him when she thought I couldn't hear. She made a point of excluding me from conversations, dinners, even small family moments. If I asked a question, she answered for him. If I tried to sit beside him, she slipped into the seat first. And Michael, oh my sweet boy, he didn't push back. He let her lead him like a man under a spell. One afternoon I overheard her say, "It's time we looked into nursing homes. She can't stay here forever." Michael didn't protest. He didn't say a word. The walls of my own home began to close in on me. My sanctuary had become a prison, and my jailer wore a smile every time my son was looking. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. The footage was my only weapon. If I stayed silent, I would not survive Jessica's next attempt. But showing Michael alone was too risky. I needed someone impartial. Someone who couldn't be swayed by her lies. So I called my lawyer again. "I'm ready," I told him, my voice steady for the first time in weeks. "I'll bring the footage." We set a date. 2 days later, I would go to his office and begin the process of pressing charges. But somehow Jessica found out. The night before my appointment, I woke to the sound of my door clicking open. My breath caught in my throat as I saw her silhouette in the moonlight. She stood there, perfectly still, as if listening to my heartbeat in the dark. I froze, pretending to be asleep. My chest rose and fell slowly, evenly, though every nerve in my body screamed in terror. She stepped closer, closer. I could smell her perfume, sharp and cloying. She leaned down, her lips almost brushing my ear. And she whispered the words that chilled me to the bone. "You think you're clever, don't you? But I know what you've been hiding. And if you go through with it, you'll never wake up again." She straightened, turned, and slipped out of the room, closing the door softly behind her. I lay there in the dark, my body shaking violently, clutching the blanket like it could shield me from her malice. She knew. Somehow she knew. And if she knew, then I had no time left. Backhand index pointing right. What would you do if the very person trying to kill you discovered your only evidence? Would you run? Or would you fight? Stay tuned for the next chapter. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see how Margaret's story unfolds. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single second. I lay in the dark, wide-eyed, every creak of the house magnified in my ears. Jessica's whisper replayed in my head over and over. "If you go through with it, you'll never wake up again." By the time the sun broke over the horizon, I knew one thing for certain. If I hesitated again, I was dead. The fear was still there, heavy and paralyzing, but underneath it, a fire had started to burn. I had lived too long, fought too hard, sacrificed too much to let a greedy woman snuff me out like a candle. That morning, when Jessica breezed into the kitchen with her smug smile, I forced myself to meet her gaze. She set a cup of tea in front of me. "Drink up, Margaret. You need your strength." Her voice was sweet, but I didn't touch the cup. I kept my eyes locked on hers. And for the first time I saw it, the flicker of panic when she realized I wasn't playing her game anymore. At exactly 10 a.m. I left the house. I didn't tell Jessica where I was going. I didn't even tell Michael. My heart raced as I clutched my purse, the little flash drive inside it feeling like a live grenade. I walked straight into my lawyer's office, my legs trembling but my back straight. He greeted me with a firm handshake. "Mrs. Lewis, are you ready?" He nodded. "Yes. I can't keep living like this. She won't stop until she succeeds." He slid a notepad across the desk. "We'll prepare everything. With this footage, we have more than enough to involve the police. But once we file this, there's no going back." His words sank deep. No going back. Thought of Michael. His soft laugh as a boy. His tiny hand gripping mine on his first day of school. The way he used to say, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll always protect you." Would pressing charges mean losing him forever? Tears blurred my vision, but I steadied my hand and nodded. "Do it." That night when I came home, Jessica was waiting in the living room. She was sitting on the couch, her legs crossed, a glass of wine in her hand. The moment I stepped in, her eyes locked onto me. "You went out," she said, her tone casual but her gaze sharp. "Yes," I replied, my voice calm, steady. Her lips curved into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Running errands." I set my purse down and looked at her squarely. "Something like that." For a moment, the room was silent, tension thick enough to choke on. And then she laughed. A low, chilling laugh. "Do you really think anyone's going to believe you, Margaret? You're old, forgetful, fragile. You can't even get your own son to take your side." Her words cut deep, but I didn't flinch. Because I knew something she didn't. My decision was already in motion. The wheels were turning, and nothing she said could stop it now. Over the next few days, things escalated quickly. The police contacted me, asking for a formal statement. My lawyer assured me everything was proceeding exactly as it should. But Jessica, she sensed the shift. Her smiles became tighter. Her eyes followed me everywhere. At night, I could hear her pacing outside my room. She was unraveling, and that made her more dangerous than ever. Michael, caught in the middle, grew colder. One evening at dinner, he set down his fork and looked at me. "Mom, what are you trying to do? Jessica says you're telling people lies about her. Do you want to destroy my marriage?" The pain in his voice nearly broke me. I wanted to reach across the table, grab his hands and scream, "No, I just want to survive." But instead I whispered, "I'm trying to protect myself, Michael. One day you'll see." He pushed back his chair and stormed out, leaving me staring at the empty space where my son used to be. Then 2 nights later the danger came crashing down. It was past midnight when I woke to the sound of glass shattering in the kitchen. My heart jolted as I sat up, straining to listen. Footsteps echoed through the house. Slow, deliberate, coming closer. I reached for my phone, but it was gone. My nightstand drawer was half open, empty where I had left it charging. The footsteps stopped outside my door. The doorknob twisted. And then Jessica's voice, low and venomous, slid through the crack of the door. "Last chance, Margaret. Stop this, or tonight's the night." Backhand index pointing right. If you were in Margaret's shoes, would you confront Jessica head-on? Or run for your life before it's too late? Comment below, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next chapter, because the next twist will leave you breathless. The doorknob rattled again, this time more forcefully. My heart slammed against my ribs. Every instinct told me to scream, but I bit it back. Screaming would only feed her satisfaction. Jessica's voice slid under the crack of the door, low and sharp like a knife scraping glass. "Open the door, Margaret. Let's have a little talk." I stayed silent, clutching the blanket to my chest like armor. After a moment the knob stilled. Then came the sound of soft laughter, followed by fading footsteps. She was walking away, but I knew she'd be back. I forced myself to breathe slowly. They come. They sharp. The flash drive was still hidden beneath my pillow, the footage safe. But my phone was gone, stolen right from my nightstand. That meant one thing. Jessica was onto me completely. Morning came heavy with dread. Michael barely looked at me at breakfast. Jessica acted as though nothing had happened. She hummed while pouring him coffee, her hand brushing his shoulder possessively. I stirred my tea, my mind racing. I couldn't rely on Michael anymore. If I wanted to survive, I needed someone else on my side. Someone who couldn't be manipulated. So, when they both left the house that afternoon, Michael for work, Jessica for errands, I made my move. I slipped out quietly, clutching my purse close, and walked straight to the small church 3 blocks away. Pastor Daniel had known me since Richard and I first married. His kind eyes had seen me through grief, joy, and everything in between. If there was anyone I could trust, it was him. When I walked into his office, he looked up in surprise. "Margaret, are you all right? You look pale." I sat down across from him, my hands trembling as I slid the flash drive across the desk. "Pastor, I need you to see this." He plugged it into his computer without a word. And when the footage played, the color drained from his face. When it ended, he leaned back slowly, shaking his head. "Good Lord. Margaret, this is serious. You can't go back there tonight." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "But my son, he doesn't believe me. If I leave, I lose him. If I stay, she'll kill me." Pastor Daniel reached across the desk, covering my hand with his. "Sometimes survival has to come before love. Your son may be blind now, but the truth will open his eyes one day. For now, we must protect you." By evening, Pastor Daniel had made calls. He arranged for me to stay with a church family for a few nights, in secret. "It's only until the police take action," he assured me. But before I left, I made a choice. I slipped the flash drive back into my purse. It was my lifeline, and I wasn't letting it out of my hands. That night, as I packed a small bag, Michael came into my room. His expression was tight, his eyes tired. "Mom," he said, "Jessica told me you've been sneaking around, going to lawyers, to the church." My heart dropped. She knew everything. "Michael, please." I started. He cut me off, his voice shaking. "Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to destroy my marriage?" The words hit like a blow. Destroy his marriage. I was fighting for my life, and all he saw was betrayal. Tears filled my eyes. "Because she tried to kill me, Michael. And if you can't see that, then maybe you don't know your own wife at all." He stood there, fists clenched, jaw tight. For a moment, I thought he might actually strike the dresser. But then he just turned and stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. I sat there, shaking, knowing that whatever came next would break us for good. At midnight, I was ready to slip out with my small bag when I heard voices downstairs. Jessica's voice, sharp and urgent. "She's up to something, Michael. If we don't do something now, she'll ruin everything." Michael's voice, lower, conflicted. "Jessica, stop." Jessica hissed. "No. Tonight. We finish this tonight." My blood ran cold. I froze at the top of the stairs, clutching my bag. Every instinct screamed for me to run. But where? If I tried to leave now, they'd see me. And then I heard it, the sound of the back door unlocking. Someone else was here. Heavy footsteps entered the house. A man's voice. "Woof. Where is she?" Backhand index pointing right. "Who do you think that man is? An accomplice Jessica called to finish the job, or someone Margaret doesn't expect at all?" Comment your thoughts, subscribe, and don't miss the next chapter, because the next twist changes everything. The man's voice was gravelly, impatient. "Where is she?" I froze at the top of the stairs, my breath caught in my chest. Jessica's reply came quickly, sharp with urgency. "Upstairs. End of the hall." My knees nearly gave out. She had brought someone into my home. Someone meant to do what she hadn't been able to finish herself. Michael's voice broke through, low and uncertain. Jessica, what are you doing? Who is this? Jessica snapped. Don't be weak now, Michael. She's tearing us apart. Do you want to lose everything because of her? The man's footsteps were heavy as he started up the stairs. Each thud of his boots sent a chill through me. My hands fumbled for anything to defend myself. My eyes landed on the small brass candlestick on my dresser. I gripped it, my hands trembling. The first shadow appeared at the top of the stairs. Broad shoulders, thick arms, face half hidden in the dark. His eyes met mine, cold and empty. Time to go, old lady, he growled. I raised the candlestick with shaking hands. Don't come near me. He smirked. Or what? You'll tap me with that. He stepped closer. My heart pounded so loud I thought it would burst. I was 78 years old, frail and fragile, but in that moment, something fierce surged inside me. The instinct that had carried me through poverty, loss, and betrayal. The instinct to survive. I swung the candlestick with every ounce of strength I had. It connected with his shoulder, a dull thud echoing through the room. He grunted, stumbling back a step. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I darted past him down the stairs, my bag clutched to my chest. My breath came in ragged gasps, every bone in my body screaming, but adrenaline kept me moving. Behind me, Jessica shrieked. Don't let her leave. I ran toward the front door, but Michael was there, blocking my path. His face was pale, torn with confusion. Mom, stop, he shouted. Cried out, my voice breaking. Michael, please. She brought a man into our house to kill me. Get out of my way. But he didn't move. His hands lifted as though to calm me. His eyes darting between me and Jessica. Jessica rushed down the stairs, her voice venomous. She's hysterical. Don't let her run off and embarrass us with her stories. And in that moment I saw it. Michael wasn't going to save me. Not tonight. Not while Jessica's poison still clouded his judgment. So I did the only thing I could. I shoved him aside with every ounce of strength left in me and stumbled out the front door into the cold night. The street was dark and empty. My lungs burned, my legs weak, but I kept moving one step at a time. Behind me, I could hear the man's heavy footsteps pounding after me. Come back here, old woman, he roared. I turned the corner, my chest on fire. I didn't know where I was running to. All I knew was that if I stopped, it was over. And then a pair of headlights. A car turned onto the street, its beams washing over me. I waved frantically, stumbling into the road. The car screeched to a halt. The driver's door flew open. Pastor Daniel leapt out. His face etched with shock. Margaret! What on earth? Help me! I cried, clutching his arm. Behind us, the man skidded to a stop at the end of the block. His chest heaving, his fists clenched. Jessica's silhouette appeared behind him, her voice slicing through the night. She won't get away this time. Pastor Daniel shoved me into the car, slamming the door shut. He jumped into the driver's seat and gunned the engine. The tires squealed as we tore down the street, the figures of Jessica and the man shrinking in the rearview mirror. I collapsed against the seat, sobbing, my hands shaking uncontrollably. You're safe now, Pastor Daniel said firmly. His eyes on the road. You're with me. But deep down I knew I wasn't safe yet. Not until the world knew the truth. And not until Jessica was stopped. The next morning I filed the official police report. My lawyer handed over the footage. The detectives watched in silence, their faces grim. One of them finally said, Mrs. Lewis, this is clear attempted homicide. We'll need to bring her in for questioning. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Because just as they were preparing to act, the phone on the detective's desk rang. He listened for a moment, his face tightening. Then he hung up and looked at me. Mrs. Lewis, there's been an incident. Your son has been hospitalized. My blood turned cold. What happened to Michael? The detective exchanged a glance with his partner. He was found unconscious in your home. Backhand index pointing right. Do you think Jessica turned on Michael when she realized the police were closing in? Or is there another sinister twist? Comment your thoughts, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next chapter, because the truth is about to come crashing down. When the detective said the words, "Your son has been hospitalized," my knees buckled. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself. Hospitalized. How bad is it? My voice trembled, almost breaking. The detective shook his head grimly. He was found on the living room floor. Head injury. We don't know yet if it was an accident or... His words trailed off, heavy with implication. Or if Jessica had turned on him. Tears stung my eyes as a wave of emotions surged through me. My son. My only child. The boy I had carried, raised, sacrificed everything for. Despite everything, despite his silence, despite his blindness to her cruelty, I couldn't lose him. "I need to see him," I whispered. "Please take me to him." The hospital was bright, sterile, suffocating. The smell of disinfectant stung my nostrils as I hurried down the corridor beside Pastor Daniel. My hands trembled around the small Bible he had pressed into my palms on the way. We reached the room. Through the glass, I saw Michael lying on the bed, pale, a bandage around his head. Tubes snaked into his arms. Machines beeped softly, counting every fragile heartbeat. I pressed a hand to the glass, my breath catching. "My boy." A nurse came out quietly. "He's stable but unconscious. We don't know when he'll wake." My throat tightened. I wanted to collapse into the chair beside his bed and stay there forever, but there were bigger questions clawing at me. "How did it happen?" Yes. The nurse's eyes flickered. "The police brought him in. They said there were signs of a struggle." A struggle. My stomach twisted. That meant only one thing, Jessica. Later that night, the detectives returned. One of them carried a notepad. His expression sharp. "Mrs. Lewis, we searched the house," he said. "We found broken glass in the living room, signs of a fight, and a woman's shoe print near where your son was lying." "Jessica," I whispered, bile rising in my throat. The detective nodded grimly. "We've issued a warrant. We'll find her." But his words brought no comfort. Because Jessica wasn't the kind of woman to simply run. She was the kind to plot, to hide, to strike again when you least expected it. I sat by Michael's bedside the next morning, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. Pastor Daniel sat quietly beside me, his presence grounding me. I leaned closer to my son and whispered, "Michael, please wake up. Please see the truth. I can't lose you, not like this." My tears dripped onto his hand, my frail fingers wrapping around his. For a moment I thought I felt a twitch. His eyelids fluttered, but then stilled again. I closed my eyes and prayed. By afternoon the news came. Jessica's car had been found abandoned near the river. But she was gone. Vanished. "She's running," the detective said. "She knows we have enough to put her away. But don't worry, we'll catch her." But I wasn't so sure. Jessica was clever, cunning. And if she was desperate enough to turn on Michael, there was no telling what she'd do next. That night, as I sat in the dim hospital room, a shadow moved outside the glass. I looked up and my blood ran cold. There, standing at the end of the hallway, was Jessica. Her hair was wild, her eyes burning with fury. She raised a finger to her lips, and then pointed directly at me. Backhand index pointing right. What would you do if the woman who tried to kill you showed up outside your hospital room, even with the police hunting her? Comment below, subscribe, and don't miss the next chapter, because the next move Jessica makes will change everything. Froze. My whole body turned to stone as I stared through the glass. Jessica stood at the far end of the hallway. Her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She raised a single finger to her lips, then slowly dragged it across her throat in a chilling gesture. I gasped and lurched to my feet, knocking over the chair beside me. Pastor Daniel shot up too, his eyes following my trembling finger as I pointed. There she is," cried. But by the time he turned, she was gone. The hallway was empty, the fluorescent lights flickering as if mocking me. The detective, who had been standing guard at the nurse's station, came running. "What happened?" "She was here," I panted. "Jessica." "She was right there." He cursed under his breath, radioing for backup. Officers scattered down the halls, searching every corridor, every stairwell, every exit. But Jessica had vanished, as though she'd melted into the walls. That night, I sat by Michael's bed, too afraid to close my eyes. My son lay pale and still, machines keeping rhythm for the breaths I prayed he would take on his own. I whispered to him, my voice cracking. "Michael, I need you to wake up, please. She's still out there. She's not going to stop. Not until she takes everything." I brushed his hand with mine. Twitched. Just slightly, but enough. Tears filled my eyes. "Come back to me, son. Please." Behind me, Pastor Daniel kept vigil. He hadn't left my side once since that night I ran into his car. His presence gave me strength, but even his calm couldn't erase the dread seeping into my bones. Because Jessica wasn't hiding. She was hunting. 2 days passed. Jessica evaded capture, slipping through the cracks as though she had rehearsed this escape for months. The police kept me under guard, but I still felt her eyes on me everywhere I went. In the cafeteria, in the chapel, even in my dreams. And then, on the 3rd night, the hospital lost power. The machines in Michael's room beeped frantically, backup generators humming to life. Nurses scrambled, flashlights slicing through the darkened halls. My heart stopped. This wasn't an accident. This was her. I pressed my back against the wall, clutching Michael's limp hand. Pastor Daniel grabbed the candlestick the nurses had left on the desk. His jaw tight, eyes fierce. From down the hall came the sound of footsteps. Low, steady, deliberate. And then her voice, echoing through the dark. "Margaret, you can't hide from me forever." I gasped, my body trembling. "She's here," I whispered to Daniel. "She's in the building." He nodded, his grip tightening on the candlestick. "Stay behind me." The footsteps grew closer. And then, from the shadows, she emerged. Jessica. Her hair disheveled, her face pale, but her eyes burning with madness. In her hand glinted something metallic. A scalpel stolen from the hospital. "Time's up, old woman," she hissed. "This ends tonight." I stood, my knees trembling but my back straight. "Jessica, you've already failed. Everyone knows. The police, the pastor, the doctors. They all know what you've done." She laughed, sharp and wild. "Do you think any of that matters if you don't live to testify?" She lunged forward. I screamed, stumbling back, my hands fumbling for anything to defend myself. Pastor Daniel stepped in front of me, swinging the candlestick. The scalpel clattered to the floor, Jessica snarling as she clawed at him with her nails. Chaos erupted. Nurses screamed. Alarms blared. Officers burst through the door, weapons drawn. "Drop it," they shouted. Jessica whipped around, her eyes wide and frantic. And in that split second, Michael stirred. His voice, weak but clear, cut through the chaos. "Stop, Jessica." Every head turned toward the bed. My son's eyes were open, hazy but alive. Jessica froze, her chest heaving, her wild gaze locked on him. For the first time, her mask cracked. "You," she spat. "You weren't supposed to wake up." Tears spilled down my cheeks. "Michael, it's over. You see her now. You see what she is." His lips trembled, his voice barely a whisper. I do." The officers lunged forward, tackling Jessica to the ground. She shrieked, thrashing, her screams echoing through the ward as they handcuffed her. But even as they dragged her away, she turned her head and locked eyes with me, a twisted smile on her lips. "This isn't over, Margaret. You'll pay for this. I swear it." I collapsed into the chair, sobbing, clutching Michael's hand. My son was awake. My enemy was caught. For the first time in months, hope stirred in my chest. But as the officers marched Jessica out of the hospital, a single question gnawed at me. Had we truly seen the last of her? Backhand pointing right. Do you think Jessica's arrest is the end? Or is she hiding one last card to play? Comment your thoughts, subscribe, and get ready for the next chapter, because the final showdown is coming, and the truth will shock you. The day of Jessica's arraignment came faster than I ever imagined. I stood outside the courthouse, the autumn wind biting at my cheeks, my cane pressing into the ground for support. My heart hammered, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from resolve. For months I had been hunted, smothered, gaslit, and nearly erased from the world I had worked so hard to build. But today, I wasn't the frail old woman Jessica thought she could suffocate in the night. I was Margaret Lewis, survivor, mother, fighter, and I was about to face her one last time. Inside, the courtroom was heavy with tension. Reporters filled the benches, their pens scratching across notepads. The public had caught wind of the story. Elderly mother targeted in inheritance plot, and now the eyes of the town were fixed on us. Jessica sat at the defense table, her hair pulled back neatly, her lips painted in a cruel shade of red. Even in handcuffs, she held her chin high, as though she were the victim. When her eyes met mine across the room, a smirk tugged at her mouth. She still thought she could win. Michael sat beside me, pale but healing, a bandage still wrapped around his head. He gripped my hand, his voice breaking as he whispered, "I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have believed you sooner." Tears welled in my eyes. I squeezed his hand, my voice firm. "You see now, Michael. That's enough." The prosecutor rose, his voice steady. "Your Honor, the evidence speaks for itself." The footage played on the big screen. The room went silent. Every breath I'd fought for, every thrash beneath that pillow, every ounce of Jessica's malice, captured forever. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The jurors leaned forward, eyes wide. When the video ended, the prosecutor's words cut sharp. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a delusion. This was attempted murder. Jessica's lawyer stammered, trying to spin a story of confusion, of stress, of a caring daughter-in-law misunderstood. But the evidence was too clear, too damning. And then it was my turn. I stood, leaning on my cane, my knees trembling but my voice steady. I faced the judge, the jury, the strangers who had come to witness my truth. "I gave my life to my family," I began. "I worked, I sacrificed, I poured every ounce of love I had into raising my son and protecting my home. And in return, my daughter-in-law tried to take my life for greed." I paused, letting the words settle, my eyes sweeping the room. "I want you all to understand something. Evil doesn't always come as a stranger in the night. Sometimes it comes wearing a smile, sitting at your dinner table, calling you Mom." My voice cracked, but I held my head high. I am alive today because I trusted my instincts, because I refused to let silence bury me. And I hope that anyone hearing my story remembers this. If something feels wrong, don't wait until it's too late. Survive. The courtroom was silent. Then, slowly, a murmur of agreement spread through the crowd. The verdict didn't take long. "Guilty," the foreman announced. "On all counts." Jessica's face twisted, her mask finally shattering. She screamed, lunging toward me as officers restrained her. "You ruined me, you old witch. This isn't over." The gavel slammed down. "Order," the judge barked. But her words didn't shake me. Not anymore. Because for the first time in a long time I wasn't afraid. I looked her straight in the eye as they dragged her away and whispered, "It's already over." Weeks later I sat on my porch, the autumn leaves swirling around me. Michael sat beside me, quieter now, humbled, his hand warm in mine. "Mom," he said softly, "how do you forgive me? After everything?" I smiled faintly, my heart heavy but at peace. "Because you're my son. And because forgiveness is strength, not weakness. But don't mistake my forgiveness for forgetting. You saw how close silence came to killing me. Never again, Michael. Never again." He nodded, tears in his eyes. And in that moment I knew he finally understood. My life would never be the same. The scars would never fully fade. But I had survived. I had spoken. And I had proven that even in old age, even when the world sees you as fragile, you are never powerless. Because survival is not about strength of the body. It is about strength of the spirit. And mine was unbreakable. Back in X pointing right. If this story touched you, remember this. Silence can kill, but truth can save lives. What would you do if someone you loved betrayed you like this? Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more stories, and never forget, you are stronger than you think.